Hello everybody. Today we're going to discuss sizers. Sizers help us position widgets inside of our window. wxWidgets has several types of sizers, but today we'll be talking about the wxBoxSizer. The box sizer positions widgets next to each other either horizontally or vertically. I want a vertical box sizer, so I'm going to pass wxVertical to the constructor. If I wanted a horizontal box sizer, I would pass wxHorizontal. And then we just need to call setSizer. Our sizer won't do anything unless we put a widget inside of it, so I'm going to go ahead and create a text control. The first parameter to the text control is the parent. In this case, that's going to be our frame, so we can just pass this pointer. And the second parameter is the ID. For now, we'll just use wxID any. And now we just need to add the control to the sizer. To do that, we just use the add method. All right, let's see what that looks like. So now we have our text control over here in the corner. Now let's see what we can do with the sizer. The second parameter to the sizer determines whether or not the widget should be stretched. 0 is the default value, and it means the widget shouldn't be stretched. I'm going to pass 1, which means the widget will be stretched in the vertical direction. So now you can see the widget stretched all the way down to the bottom. Now if I change this to wx horizontal, the widget will be stretched in the horizontal direction. Just like that. The third parameter to the add method allows us to specify flags. There are several different types of flags. If you want to see a full list, you can go to the wxSizer documentation. So here's wxSizer, and if you scroll down, you'll see a list of flags. For right now, we're going to use the wxExpand flag. What the expand flag does is it tells wxWidgets that our widget should take up all of the available space. So now you can see it takes up all of the space. Because of how the wxBoxSizer works, the second parameter specifies whether or not the widget should be stretched in the vertical direction or the horizontal direction. It depends on what you pass to the constructor. And the wxExpand flag determines whether or not the widget should be stretched in the opposite direction. And the final parameter to the add method is the border. If we want a border, we can specify the width in pixels. And you'll notice there's no border here. That's because we have to tell wxWidgets where we want the border. For right now, I'm going to use the wxAll flag. And now you can see a 10 pixel border all the way around the window. If we wanted to, we could pass wxLeft. And that will place a border on the left side of our widget. So you can see the border over here. There's also wxTop, wxRight, and wxBottom. And if you pass all four, it's equivalent to passing wxAll. Okay, let's go back to just the normal widget. And we'll pass 0 to the second parameter, which means the widget shouldn't stretch. And on the third parameter, we'll pass wxAlignRight. And that should push our widget all the way to the right, like you can see here. There's also wxAlignCenter, which will put our widget in the center. Not all of the align flags work with the wxBoxSizer. If I do wxAlignBottom, for example, we'll get an error. That's because the vertical alignment is taken care of by the wxBoxSizer in this case. We can also set the minimum size of the widget. The sizer will respect the widget's minimum size, so we don't have to worry about it shrinking the widget past its minimum size. And now you can see we have a 100 by 100 pixel widget. Alright, let's get rid of this. And now let's add another widget to our sizer. This time we'll create a wxStaticText widget. The wxStaticText widget just allows us to display some text. The first parameter to the wxStaticText is the parent, which will be the frame, so we'll pass the this pointer. And next we need to pass the ID, so we'll just use wxIdAny for now. And finally we need to pass the text. In this case, I'm going to pass first name as our text. And we'll need to add our widget to the sizer, of course. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Okay, so we can see what the box sizer is doing now. It's placing the static text widget on top of the text control in a vertical alignment. I actually want them positioned horizontally. So what we'll do is we'll create another wxBoxSizer, except this time we'll create a horizontal box sizer. And instead of adding our widgets to the main sizer, we'll add them instead to the first name sizer. And we'll have to add our first name sizer to the main sizer. So now we have nested sizers. And you can see now the widgets are next to each other instead of on top of each other. One thing I want to change is I want this widget here to stretch all the way to the edge of the window. So if we add a 1 to the second parameter, that will tell the box sizer we want our widget to stretch. But as you can see, it doesn't stretch. The reason for that is because we don't just need our widget to stretch, we also need the main sizer to stretch. Remember, our widget is inside two sizers, the horizontal sizer and the main sizer, and we need them both to stretch. To get the main sizer to stretch, I'll need to pass the wxExpand flag. And now you can see our widget is stretched. I don't like how these two widgets are so close to each other. I'm going to add a little space here. We can add a width and a height to the add method, and that will create a space. Here I'm creating a 20 pixel wide space. And you can see we have a space here now. I also want a border around the first name sizer, so I'm going to add the wxAll flag. And then I'm going to specify a 5 pixel border. Alright, so you can see our border shows up now. Let's go ahead and create a field for the last name. To do that, we can just copy the first name code. So we can copy everything from here to the horizontal box sizer. Okay, so now we have two fields, one for the first name and one for the last name. A couple of small problems here though. These boxes don't line up perfectly, and the space here is a little bit too big. So let's fix this first. Instead of creating a space like this, we're going to use the minimum size instead. So let's get rid of that. And then we'll set the minimum size. I'm going to set the width to 125 pixels. And I'm going to keep the height the same. And we need to do the same thing for the first name label as well. And I forgot to remove this space. So let's do that. And there you go, it lines up perfectly now. Now let's fix this space. It's a little too big. So here where we added our last name sizer, instead of passing wxAll, we're going to pass wxLeft, wxRight, and wxBottom. And now the space here should be the correct size. Now that we have our sizers in place, we can call the fit method. The fit method will cause the sizer to shrink the window down so that there's no empty space. You can see the window shrunk down, but it shrunk down a little bit too much because we can't see the last name field. The reason for that is because we're calling the fit method before we create the status bar. Since the status bar doesn't exist when we call fit, it's not being taken into account. Calling fit should be one of the last things you do in your constructor. And now we can see the last name field. But I don't like the size of the window. This window is a little bit too small. Before we call fit, we can set the minimum size of the window. I'm going to set the minimum size to 400 pixels by 200 pixels. And there you go, that's a little bit better. The width is good, and the height doesn't really matter because the height of the window will increase as we add widgets. Okay guys, that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.